Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Welcome. I want to welcome everyone today to our Healing Generations podcast. It's hosted once a month by the National Comadres Network. And we are very excited to be again uniting, presenting a new guest, and just being able to have those conversations that sometimes we wish we had more often. I know it's a beautiful time of the year, even though I'm not sure. I know our, Pachamama is having a difficult time here. I'm up in a lonely land, comadre, and it's been cold. Ooh. So cold. We're in the springtime where things should be bursting with flowers and beautiful, besides the colors, but some heat. And it's so cold and windy. And so I'm not sure how is it going down there, but how are you doing down there in L.A.?
Oh, thank you, comadre. I'm trying to figure out, too, like I said before, you've heard me mention it, the menopause weather. It's crying, it's sunny, it's gloomy, it's just going through all those phases. Some days it's Papa Soul's out there just blessing us with all that beautiful energy, and then here comes the rain to be that balance, It's a good lesson, though, just how nature is. Nature does what it needs to do at the right time. Teaches a lot of patience, although I prefer the sunshine always. But just trying to surrender to the moment, to whatever nature needs to do to rebalance herself. As we go forward.
Yeah. Well, this is Deborah Luis Camarillo, and you're joining us today, Maestra Susie Armijo, and we're going to have a special guest. But as you're listening today, and you're hearing us all over the world, I want to remind you, because this is a time for you. Things are happening all day long. And sometimes we get so caught up into all the things that are happening that we don't have these little breathers, these little times to just kind of get filled for ourselves to keep going. And so I'm going to invite you, listeners, as you're out there, to set this time for you, to listen, because there's going to be words in this conversation that's going to bring sunlight into your life, to bring healing into you, to change that vibration from that low, but let's raise it up a little bit to bring some healing into your life. And so as we go on today, mark it for you. And trust me, all those things that are out there waiting will still be waiting when we finish our little plática, our little conversation. So join us today as we meet another special guest. And with that, comadre, let's introduce our guest for today.
Absolutely, comadre. She's not just a guest. She's our comadre.
Yeah, that's true.
Our comadre. One of the first and original founding members of our Comadres Network back since 2013. Comadre, It's been a while how fast time flies, huh? 2013. And she's very, very supportive in helping us to build a solid foundation for our network. Contributed so much in getting that in place and helping us to move forward on the next step. So happy for her and all the work that she's doing. She is Marcia Rincon-Gallardo. She is a Chicana, Mexicana, and Indígena mujer. She holds her master's degree in social work. She's a policy professor and an author. She's currently a chief of systems change and equity at the California Office of Youth Community Restoration, OYCR. Prior to joining OYCR, she was the executive director of the Alianza for Youth Justice. She is also the founder and principal consultant of Noxin, equal justice for all. Pairing healing-centered practices and racial equity work to strengthen youth justice systems transformation with a focus on ending incarceration of our youth of color. She provided training, technical assistance, and consultation at a national, state, and local level in the youth justice system. In 2022, she co-taught the curriculum, the Olean Youth Curriculum and Training of Trainers with directly impacted youth and their families to build policy advocates and leaders for the field. As she continues to work, support, and advocate for racial justice and healing, she's also a daughter, she's a mom, a sister, and it is with great honor to have her here with us today as our comadre. Comadre Marcia, welcome.
Welcome, welcome.
So good to see you. And pass the palabra to you, give you a chance to introduce yourself and invite you to share a little bit about yourself, your family, your background, the work that you do, that you're connected to at this time, and whatever comes out of your spirit. I know you have a lot of spirit guides around you. I know some of them personally, some of those ancestors that we've all been blessed to have with in our lives through the years, through the lanza. I'd like to invite all of them, invite all those maestros, maestras, those ancestors, all those that have helped us to be who we are today.
Yeah. So, comadres, both of you, comadre and maestras, Deborah Camarillo and then Maestra Susie, it's like I am so blessed and honored to be here. I feel really special. I turned on some sage over here and, just smudged myself so that I could let go of everything that I was doing earlier. And but I feel really thankful to both of you for this opportunity to be here and just, share a few words. And you introduced me so beautifully. The only thing I would probably share is I feel more often these days, I like sharing my spirit name. Mama Cobb, she did me the honors. And right before COVID, she came around and I was ready. I was getting ready to turn 60 and she did a naming ceremony. And so my spirit name is Tlacapantzin, el lugar del respeto sagrado. And I just, I put that out there the way that our ancestors taught us, that these were things that belong to us because it comes from the cosmos. And, and I really honor what my parents named me. But then this one here, it belongs to me. And so I feel really, it feels special, to just be here and with your presence. And I just got back from Nueva York and it was a conversation. Believe it or not, it was a collaborative on reckoning and justice. And sometimes I like, wow, how did I get here? What brought me here? Right. I'm sure you all think like that sometimes when you get invited to things.
Absolutely.
And man, I was sitting there feeling some way, But the beauty was that there was a sister there who, did a land acknowledgement with the Lenape people and then talked about that river right outside Columbia University and the original people of that land. Right now, I'm in Miwokma Ohlone land, and I feel, really honored to be here. But originally, I'm from Mexico, from Mexicali. I was born in Mexicali, and my mom, her bloodline goes to Magdalena, Sonora, what she used to call the Papago, and they've renamed themselves to Tohono O'odham people. And so, I say all that. You're correct. I am a daughter. I've had 3 other siblings. And then my mom passed in November. So I just want to say her name, Maria Guadalupe Rincon-Gallardo Rivera. So we're still mourning and grieving her transition. But I have a daughter, beautiful daughter, Tonantzin, and then my son, Ilwicamina, and then my grandbabies, Neve and Serenity. And then my son-in-law, Rudy Martinez. And so, we're a small little family, but boy, we're in different parts of the country and we feel really, it's because they are doing so well that then I just I could put on my backpack and my tennis shoes and just go about anywhere and not feel worried or concerned.
Mm.
I feel good. I feel good. When my family is doing good, I feel really good. So I come today, just here to listen and also share what little I can say, and just really happy to see both of you.
Well, I'm telling you, we're going to have a good conversation today, right? That's the difficult part, right? Because we don't get to be able to come together as often as we would like to,
Right.
and we're pulled different ways. And just when you were talking about Mama Cobb, I was like, wow, just thinking about her. And I know she definitely contributed to my life. And then thinking about your mother, and it's like, it's just amazing how we wouldn't even know what to ask for. And somehow all these gifts come into our lives, right? The paths that cross our life at the particular times that they cross our life, we couldn't even dream it that well. And in thinking about that, because, we do have a conversation that's intentional with mujeres, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so many women out there that need to hear the words from other women and those voices that can bring hope and inspiration. And comadre, you have a track record of accomplishments that, you could write an encyclopedia about.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and you're very modest, about it. But, thinking about those things and thinking about those adventures and journeys, what would you say was the thing that kept you going? How did you contend with these different things? How do you still get up? We're not little youngsters no more. Ya estamos bajando de la montaña. That's how I say it, right? And it's like, what keeps you going? I mean, this last project is ambitious.
It is.
And so how is it that you're able to jump in the saddle every single day?
Funny you should say what you just said. I was thinking, Creator's funny with me, and I have to just, say, okay, Creator, you're just throwing me a curveball today. I have these funny conversations, and I thought, like, my brother Krober Galindo, may he rest in power. He passed a little bit right before COVID. And when we found out that he was diagnosed with cancer, for whatever reason, Creator just had my life in such a way that I put everything aside and I said, I'm going to go spend time with him. And it first started off once a month. I'd go spend 1-2 days with him. And then as it got closer and closer, it became once every 2 weeks and then once a week. And then over Christmas, it was 4 or 5 days. And what I realized, I didn't know at the time that was all preparing me for then my mom.
Wow.
My mom's passing. And my mom spent a whole year in and out of facilities, in and out of hospitals. And so you're asking me, how do I do it? Well, I think I've chosen and I've allowed myself to do the non-traditional path of life. Is like, I don't drive the latest car and I don't have the latest this and that. I chose non-materialism to, contend with what's quality of life, and then staying really close, the way we say, staying real close to that grandpa fire, and then that sacred water, because water is life. And then being really conscious of the air that we breathe, and then the earth, right? And when I've done that, I'm okay. I'm okay with everything else that falls right in front of me. I suppose if I was a different person, I would have been saying, wow, fulana de tal has this and that, and their kids have this and that. And wow, how come I didn't do that, But I really have to appreciate that for whatever reason, this is my life. And every single moment, I wake up in the morning, and when I could get on my bike and ride for 5 miles, I come home and I say, Woo, Creator, thank you. I have my 2 legs. I could get on my bike and ride my bike.
Right.
Because I have comadres and sisters that cannot walk.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They cannot walk at my age.
Mm-hmm.
Diabetes, so algo les pasó, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to really give thanks every single day that I'm healthy. And my children are doing really good. My aunties, my tios, my tias, my nephews, my nieces, and those ones that call me auntie too.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people I don't allow people to call me tia or auntie unless I've earned it. Because sometimes they just want to call you that because everybody else is calling you. And I'm like, no. It doesn't work that way. I want to earn it. I really want to earn it. I don't want you to just call me that just because. So anyway, these past couple of years with COVID, the Surgeon General for the United States was talking about the loneliness. It's a huge deluge of loneliness that's happening all over this country right now. And you have to be intentional about getting out of that loneliness. And I'm there. I live in my house. My children live in other places. And I have to say to myself, you got to get your butt out this door, get outside and go visit somebody, call somebody. It's not enough to just be on the phone, take some medicine with you, never show up without anything, and just sit and visit. I end up visiting all my, my elders, and I have so much joy when I can do that. So that's how it is right now. But I pace myself. I have to really, really pace myself and say, I pick and choose what are the things that I think could really happen, and then speak with the Creator and the cosmos and put that prayer forward. So I'm not afraid to do the work. It's more aligning it so that it works in favor of those things that we think are so important, traditionally for our young people.
Right.
So I'll leave it there.
Beautiful. I know you've been an advocate for so many years, and I know your passion is racial justice and creating leaders for the next generation, focusing on our youth, our young girls. Comadre, as you very well know, and it continues to be reinforced to all of us, healing begins with ourselves. And in working to teach these young girls how to prepare to be the next generation for the youth justice system reform advocates, I'd like to ask you how you were able to include and bridge your own cultural indigenous teachings in order to help these girls on their own personal healing journey, helping them to break these cycles and just helping them to be able to heal and recover their sacredness after everything that they've been through. I know you have a lot of maestros and maestras. Your indigenous teachings are strong. You do not just know them, but you practice them, you live them. How are you able to bring that in, especially in a system setting? Like, how can you bridge that?
Well, there's a lot of doors that have opened. There, certainly you all, the work that so many of us have been doing continues to open doors that allows us to bring it straight in as opposed through the back door or hiding, that these are our traditional ways and that we have a right to them. But when I can say that my children were born into these ways, it's because I was raised, with Catholicism, and I have a lot of respect for people who still practice their religion in that way. But I also want to acknowledge that my ancestors had our own way of spirit and being connected to all things. And so when I was able to really practice those ways, I felt at home. That really, and so there were maestros and maestras, even I think about Maestro Jose Montoya, the first sweat I ever heard of. I didn't go in. I stayed in the car because I was scared. Oh, they're going into this little thing and it's going to be dark in there. And, they're going to come out all sweaty. Ooh, what is that? And I didn't go in. And, I was all about 17 years old, and then later on it was Maestro Guillermo Aranda and his wife Anaí Aranda, that maestros of danza, and that brought us around, and taught us the sweat lodge, and then, Shilonen and all these other things. And and then my children were born, and I was able to pull them in from the very beginning. So if I went that path because it made me feel that I was at home, and in being in those círculos, running across Maestro Geriteo and you, Maestra Susie, and then other people along the way, it's like we said, oh, wait a minute, we want to make this possible for many more, and how do we do that? Well, by practicing it each and every day, one, and then two, when we meet with people who are using the word healing, that we say, okay, well, this is our way of healing, right? So owning it and being able to say, this is the way we choose to practice. And so if you want us to be able to heal, and the research says that when we are connected to who we are and where we come from, that's a protective factor, then it was easier to connect it to our young people who are suffering in these cages, right? And that they don't even need to be there in the first place, but that they're there and they're traumatized, and we're further harming them by being in cages. So then how can we connect them to things out in the community, switching the funding so that it doesn't all go to systems, that it actually can go to community? How many of our elders have been doing this as volunteers forever?
Right.
Well, and then they die, and they're dying with low health care, the worst health care possible, because nobody ever paid into their retirement, right? I see that over and over and over and over and over and over again. And so at what point do we pay our healers adequately so that they can be present? And our healers, some of them can start young, because no hay otra, right? We have to start them young. But all that to say to you, comadre, that when we created a curriculum, we went all the way back. So many of our curriculums, they start with 1500 and move forward. And we said, you're missing out on the best part. Why are you going to start at 1500? The best part is, what did our ancestors do with our young people before anybody came to this country and this hemisphere, And so spend time there was, everything was pointing at me in that direction. And so, several years of research and being able to re-indigenize love, talking about our two-spirit and how beautifully we revered, right, our two-spirit, and all these beautiful, el palo de enseñanza. And whenever I say palo, everybody gets all triggered, like, oh, the palo, they're going to hit a kid with the palo. But the beautiful teaching from Mama Cobb is, oh no, the palo de enseñanza is those palos that they put alongside that tree so that when the wind comes and tries to push them over, that they can actually stand strong, facing the sky. And it's like, wow, we have turned things upside down in so many ways. But anyway, it all adds up. All those little pieces of enseñanzas, and, feeling sacred. How many times have you all said that to us? How many times did we actually have to hear it before we actually believed it?
And how many times more we have to continue hearing that?
Yeah.
And, depending on the situation and the stage of life that we're in, I think that little inner child in us always needs to be acknowledged, whatever we're going through.
Yeah.
Yeah, I in hearing you remind us of what's really important, because I think we all struggle I love the fact that you said what was before the 1500s, you know, and this system and way of thinking has done a good job in trying to erase that from our mind. And now it's our job to remind ourselves that we were here long before any invaders came in. And the beauty that lies within us, that runs through our veins, you know, and what we innately know, that this system keeps trying to say, oh no, you don't know that. Oh no, you're not good enough. Oh no, you know. And in thinking about that, there is a system, because you have been such a strong advocate and warrior within the justice world, for youth especially, and thinking about this system, and they say, you know, criminal justice. Now, I don't know where the justice is within the criminal justice system, being a recipient of that myself. You wonder, okay, there's this machine that seems so big sometimes and has been given a license to really rob a lot of our youth in different parts of this nation. There's some places that have been successful in dismantling, you know, things. We're very fortunate here, let's say in the Bay Area. But even at that, right, it's not all about dismantling it, because then what do you do? And so in thinking about that, one, what are we going to do, right? What ideas can we do? And if we were to dismantle it, what would be some of the things that we could implement that would really be reflective of our spirit and who we are as a people?
That's a beautiful question. And I revel in even the question, to just sit with it, you know, burn some more copal or cedar, and then, you know, sit with directly impacted individuals, young people, middle-aged, younger than me, and as well as those that are about my age, and asking them, you know, myself, I didn't sit in one of those cages, but I have loved ones, everything from nieces and nephews, my own blood relatives, my brothers, you know, my sisters, that have been in these systems. And when you ask them, I used a term over the weekend in New York, it's a genocide of spirit.
Wow.
You know, a genocide of spirit. This is what these institutions have been doing for hundreds of years. And it's going to take us, every single one of us, because it matters that it's who is sitting in that cage, but all those people, families that are at home, the families of the people that work there, that are there 24/7, they're, you know, they go home and they're alcoholics, maybe also to medicate what they've been seeing all day, and the culture that they have to be this way, you know, punitive. When they see that a young man who couldn't handle being in this cage commits suicide, and they see that, and then they have to go home and they self-medicate because they had to live that, right? So I could spend hours just talking about that, but I don't, because what's most important is that we acknowledge that it's going to take all of us to say no more. And the beauty of that is I don't have to have all the answers. I could share what I think, but I think it's going to take all of us coming together and saying, instead of spending hundreds and thousands and millions of billions of dollars every year to incarcerate people, that costs more than it would than to educate. Just think of that, right? We are choosing to punish young people who have had trauma as opposed to educating them. And so once we make that switch, then what can we do with that money? And certainly, I've thought about this a lot, is like, well, besides education, it's like, how do we reconnect our elders with our young people because we have them so separated that they never even come in contact.
Yeah.
And that in itself is also a protective factor. We've known that. Intergenerational families that live intergenerationally. So that's a beautiful question. Some people call it reimagining justice. What I just came from was that before we can reimagine justice, we still have to reckon. And that reckoning is painful. It's so painful that it's like anything. When you have a wound, we all speak this language. When you have a wound, if all you're doing is putting the Band-Aid over it and it's getting all, sick and everything, it's like you got to go in there and just clean it out. Take care of it. And it's going to hurt first. But once you do it, híjole, you're really going to heal. But that reckoning, what happened to our ancestors? Oh boy, it just hits me everywhere inside. What happened to our women? What happened to our children? What happened to our men? Men. Generations of men. That genocide of spirit. They were really good when they said, kill the Indian and save the man. Oh boy. They were good. But it's going to take us. We have to shift that. And it's going to take all of us, everybody. Our Black communities, Native American communities, brown communities, white communities, all of us. It's going to take all of us to shift it.
So important. So
I'm voting for you for president. We need some of that conversation. Yes.
Yeah, it's just right to the point, It's so much truth that it kind of hurts. Sometimes truth hurts, but it's so needed. I'm going to bring it back around. You're talking about, and connecting it to genocide of spirits. The thing that was hitting me, because you said before that, how do we repay our elders, our maestros, all the healers that came before us and those that have sacrificed for us and continued to help heal us and guide us in any way that they could with what they had. You then mentioned you spent a lot of time visiting your elders. And I think that's just so powerful. And I think the reason it just hit such a deep place in my heart was because, losing my maestro Florencio Yescas, you never think that day is ever going to come. Right. You think our elders are going to be around forever. They're always going to be there because they always are, always ready to pick us up and dust us off and pray over us and get us back on our path and back in alignment. But what happens to their spirits? It's so beautiful to hear you say that because that means you didn't forget them. You're continuing to repay, to go back and you're being that Olim, if you will. They gave to you and now you're there for them. And they listened to you and now you're listening to them. And it's so beautiful. I don't think there's enough words to express that to our younger generation of the importance of that. And for them to come to that realization that they're not going to be here forever. And that could be your abuelito, all those elders that are in your life and guiding your life and have through the years. There will be a time, so take advantage of that. Take advantage of that time and make it a priority. And you are. I can just imagine I have to be there, just starting with Senora Cop. Like just that conversation alone right there, how much wisdom and how much knowledge and how much history and medicina and understanding that she's been able to share with you just by being in her presence, just by making it a priority and showing up to listen to her. I'm just wondering how you're able to capture it all. How are you able to preserve it, all those consejos, cultivate it and just protect that medicina, those palabras, all those words, not just with your own children. I'm sure it's already going to the grandchildren, I have no doubt. whenever you can, get those consejos in there. But how are you able to, when Marcia's not here, how are you going to keep that alive?
Yeah.
And I say that because I'm trying to do that with Maestro Florencio. Like, how can I keep his spirit alive, when
Yeah.
I'm not here anymore?
Well, there's some of us that are gifted with certain things. And, my nephew, Shipe Galindo, he sings his grandpa's songs. And oh my God, we just did the third memorial a couple of weeks ago over in Oregon, and I cried my eyes out in ceremony. 3 out of 4, right, in a row that we're doing in his memory. And so that, remembering songs, I don't know that it's my gift, but I hunkered down and I couldn't do it in the first year. But the second year, I wrote a memorial tribute of my brother Crowbear, and I interviewed his blood family. And then, there's just so many stories from my brother Crowbear that, you don't have to go very far to, the jokes. He was such a jokester, but also his regañadas, right? Like the way he would do it with love, He would call us on, you're coming in here this way, or go around, go back outside and come back in, And the day that my son did fire for ceremony all night long, that was what I had asked my brother Crowbear to do with my son before he passed. He couldn't. COVID hit, but then last year when I did ceremony on my son, I cried too. And I said, oh boy, this here, what you just did, it's going to stay in my heart for years, right? That's when I said, okay, because it wasn't me. It was all those times that he saw my brother Crowbear take care of that fire. Even in his older age, he sat there and took care of that fire. And so I can't say everything, comadre, in terms of, all I know is I'm really an audiovisual learner and I have to see it and hear it. And so if my gift is to be able to write, like, it's still too fresh, my mama's passing, but I have all the photos she gave me. I have all the story. My mother was a storyteller, but she would love to embellish. And she would say the same story 10 times in one day as we visited this tia and that tia and the other one. But with every one, she would embellish and change it up a little bit. And so I don't know which version, right? But, and there was really hard stuff about my mom too, right? There's that, both sides of that. And so honoring, the way that we talk about the night and day, hot and cold, because I don't want to ever feel shame about, what happened to her, or shame that happens to any of us, around mental illness or being abused or what have you, that's part of the healing, is being able to talk about these things. And so for those generations to come, it's like, if it's my job, maybe I'm coming to it, right? I'm growing into it. Like, if that's going to be my job, that I have to sit and write that tribute because that's going to be something written, then maybe that is, Pero my brain is, as I'm getting older, we all know this, right? There's pieces and bits that come to you. And it's at that right time that it comes and you're saying, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? So sitting and, again, tending to whether you have copal or sage. And then I also had to take myself away from everything and take a retreat. And for 2 days, sneak myself away so that I could be in nature and just fully remember my brother Crowbear to write that tribute. It took me 2 years, but I did it. And then that was my gift to the family. I don't know. Nobody said do it this way.
Right.
It just happened.
And it's such an open vessel. That's beautiful that you can surrender to it, not put it in a box or define it, but just let it flow out of your spirit the way it needs to, at the right time when it needs to.
Yeah.
Well, I like that word, tending, right?
Yeah.
Tending. That's a beautiful word, because I think, especially as we we're on this side, we're in that, that third phase in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all think about what we want to leave behind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can just imagine, seeing your son there and he's tending the fire. And it's like, oh, you got the lesson, mijo. You got the lesson, And it's amazing all the different ways, because sometimes it's just our faithfulness to the journey, because we're not necessarily the one that does the teaching. We might teach somebody else, but maybe not necessarily them, but the faithfulness to the journey that allows for that exposure, right? The consistency to know that throughout these things we believe
Mm-hmm.
in these kind of
Mm-hmm.
ways. And that being said, and thinking about this next generation
Mm-hmm.
and the healing, this podcast is intentionally called Healing Generations, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And generations that the generation we're in, the generation that was just before us,
Right.
the generation that is going to come after us, and after and after. And thinking about those thoughts of the generations that will be coming, what are some of those lessons and thoughts, maybe consejos that you would say, oh man, if you get nothing else,
Mm-hmm.
get this one, right? And not only, let's say that to come, but the past. What would be some of those things to go,
Mm-hmm.
I wish maybe
Yeah.
you would have got that,
You said it so beautifully right now. Like I had to rethink what was that journey for my sonny boy, because, oh boy, there's tearjerkers around that one. What could have happened, pero, fuimos tercos, right? We were stubborn. Nope, that's not going to happen that way. It's going to happen this way. And what I have to say is, early on, my brother Crowbear, he taught us there's that, what we call that fireplace, and you print. He would bring our babies into the ceremony, and he would print their footprints on the earth so that Mother Earth could recognize our children, and that our children could always come back home, always. And then he'd show me his forearm, and he'd say, and mijo was a peanut. And when I introduced him to the danza circle, and he'd go from here to here, he was only this big, and then years later, my son was 6 foot tall, taller than, Crow was like, what, 5'2"? So when you ask that question, comadre, I think of sin saber, right? The things that we did was the consistency of continuing to show up for each other in ceremonia, because he was that one that grew up in these ways, knowing he was sacred, knowing who he was and where he came from. He didn't have that disconnection the way that so many of us, we didn't grow up into these ways. We didn't know, some of us, until our 30s, where do you come from? And so I think that foundation is so critical, because as adolescents, we still question. We get to play around with, who am I? That's part of that adolescent development. But when you have that foundation, you can still play around, but where you're connected to, regardless. And so, I don't know, for me, I think about that. As parents, my children now tell me, no unsolicited advice, Mom. And, out of respect to them, it's like, okay, but, but when you want it, you've got to ask me, because if I'm going to respect that, then you also have to straight up ask me. And so that two-way street around, when they were little, I said, well, because I'm your mom, so I'm going to tell you this, but later on, they get to that age where, and rightly so, right? They start to separate from us and want to be on their own. So I truly believe, that as long as los encaminamos right? Los encaminamos. We walked along right with them. And then that walking them home, boy, I didn't know what that meant. I really didn't know what that meant until I literally now in the past 5 years have walked two people, the most beloved people in my life. I've walked them home to their very last breath. And when you've seen people be born, your own children, and then that other end, be present for that, whoa, sacredness of life, right? That whole journey. Yeah. For children to be around all of that, not tuck them away. No, this is life.
Well, with that being said, I'm trying to absorb it. I don't want to lose it. I'm trying to let it come in. With that being said, comadre, and not like you haven't been giving us all this all along, but as we come to the end of our podcast, unfortunately, I'm just wondering, as these next generations come up, and they have so many other things that they have to deal with that we didn't have to deal with, so many other challenges. The world is just a whole different world now, and just trying to find a way to navigate it and not let it break their spirit, like genocide of spirit. I'm wondering if you could share some consejos that you would like to give this next generation that's really struggling to find that balance and to know who they are and, be able to walk in that and be rooted so that they can just embellish it. Once they know who they are, then the rest is embellishment. Like just I'll bring in all that. Makes room for that floricanto part.
Oh, yeah.
Floricanto part, the spirit part, They got the wisdom, they know the system, they know all those things, but to be able to cultivate their spirit and get out of the mind and just let their spirit rise. Maybe you could give some consejos on how you see that or how that's been for you. I know for me it was a danza. That was my medicina. Just that was food for my soul. It continues to be. It helped me through the roughest of times. I needed that passion. I needed a connection like that deep on my soul level. And I feel that's where our youth are too. They need to feel it in their soul to give them that strength to not give up and go forward.
Yeah. That question reminded me of one time we were asked to write some kind of like a brief or pamphlet or something, that there were foster kids. And that again, it touches me in such a way. Because I was so blessed to have both my mom and my dad. And no matter, in what way your parents show up for you, the fact that you had your mom and dad, I mean, literally, really see that as a blessing. Right? So that when I was asked, when a child who didn't have mom or dad and was raised by somebody completely not blood related, then how could they learn to see who they were and where they come from? What? I was like, what? Wait a minute. Let me get that right, And so then I'm going to answer it from there.
Okay.
I had to think, because my parents were also not taught who they were and where they came from. They knew physically where they came from, but they weren't connected to their ancestral knowledge. They weren't taught that they were sacred. And at a certain point in my life, from the way that I had been treated, I realized, I'm going to have to step away, because if I stay, it's not going to be good for me as a child. And I made that conscious choice to step away. But I had to believe. I had to believe in myself to say, in order to save myself, I have to go on this journey. And part of that journey is what brought me to these ways. It wouldn't have happened any other way. It wouldn't have. For all the times that my mom said, ¿por qué te quieres ver tan indígena? And I'm like, wait a minute. What am I doing that is making me look indígena? She says, well, and so I said, is it my hair? Is it the jewelry I'm wearing? Is it the clothes I'm wearing? And I realized that her oppression around being indigenous was so deep that she didn't want me to be there. She didn't want me to live in that. And then she came to terms with it on her own. But for me and for our children who don't have parents, who don't have guides that are bringing them to their true self, it's believing in their heart. When we do hear that drum, we know it. We recognize it. It's in our DNA. And how many times have we been in ceremony when children will come to the drum and they're smiling and they'll say, oh, I feel at home, right? It's that heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
We say it's that heartbeat. That drum is that heartbeat. So that's all I can say. It might seem real simple, but I have to believe in our inherent humanity to know that we know what we have to do. And our children will be lost and they'll go through some tough stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But their hearts are lifted too. Their hearts are lifted. And I have to trust that somehow, some way, creator, creatress brings them home.
Beautiful. Well, I know this was not a disappointment if you're listening out there. This was not a disappointment. There were so many things within this conversation that brought illumination, that brought some clarity to you as you were listening. And such a beautiful story from our sister here today. And I think one of the things, I'm definitely taking away is that hope. Because even though you might be there and you have children and you do not know what to do, and maybe you're at your ends with, there are people there that love your children. There are prayers that are going up every single day in different ceremonies, because that is really what Creator wants for all of us. And so it has been such a wonderful time, Comadre Marcia Rincon, to sit here with you and appreciating your words, your words of wisdom and your experiences. And I know it has touched lives that are hearing this podcast today. And so I just want to remind you, if you're out there looking and you need places to go, please find us. You can look at National Comadres Network. You'll find these different podcasts. Go on the National Compadres Network on our webpage. There's ways to get a hold of all of us if you're looking for some support. And we want to thank you so much for spending this time with us and being and making us be who we are also. And with that, comadre, man, the time goes so fast, always so fast.
I know.
It does.
Comadre, just so grateful. I'll be hearing this podcast over and over for a while. A lot to process.
Yes.
I just, La cultura cura, those 4 ancestral teachings of dignity, love, respect, and trust.
Yes.
You're a beautiful example of that.
Yeah.
I thank you.
And with that, we just want to say bendiciones, blessings to all those that are out there. Thank you for joining us. And, comadre, you want to say your bendiciones?
Ometeo.
Adelante. Gracias.
Hasta luego.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.